Now, a little bit about myself. My name is Jonathan Sowell. I think I said that before. I have 12 years active duty Navy. I was a search and rescue corpsman. Spent a lot of time, 2 tours in Iraq, in Haiti, a lot of time doing a lot of medical stuff and security stuff while in the military. I did 3 years law enforcement experience while I was in the Navy. Really, really enjoyed it. I love law enforcement and also love medical emergency medical services as well. And I have about 12 years experience in emergency medical service. I used to teach EMS, and I used to teach students on response for terrorism and a whole plethora of things. And right now I am one of the main instructors who's teaching the active shooter content. And I believe you'll if you end up taking one of our active shooter courses or risk assessments or anything like that, I think you'll enjoy it a lot. One thing we like to say here is, it won't happen here. So active shooter, once you come through our training, we give you all the details and all the tools and all the follow-on tools that you'll need to mitigate any kind of active shooter situation in your business, your organization, home, school, anything like that. So let's kind of dive in and talk about the problem and the importance. And once we get done with this, if you have questions, feel free to put your questions in the chat box. There should be a chat box over there. Feel free to chat them out. Morgan's online with us. She might be responding to some of your questions as we're going through. And then we're going to do some Q&A at the end, so you'll have a time to just kind of ask questions and get the feel for things and figure out what's right for you. So just a little disclaimer, there is some videos I'm going to show. Some of them are graphic in nature, so if this is going to upset you or stress you, just please let me know ahead of time, so that way I can kind of take care of that. Yeah, we just want to make sure, if you look in the chat box, we just want to make sure that you guys have access to the chat box and can talk in there and ask questions. Is everybody good? All right. So I have this little video here. This came straight out of the Orlando shooting, which is pretty recently, and it's kind of just details how it happened and how the situation unfolded and ended up going. I'm going to go ahead and play this. There will be some, I might try to turn down the volume a little bit. You might not be able to hear everything. But I'll kind of narrate a little bit too. Oh, you do. I see that now too. So he goes back here. All right, sorry about that. All right, so here's a little video here. All right, so I don't know if you guys can hear this or not perfectly. If you can, great. If you can't, I'll kind of talk through this. This is the Orlando shooting and what happened. When this happened, the gunman came in through the side here. There's only a couple of different exit points and entry points that you can go in and out. And one of the biggest things was how everybody responded inside of the club. They didn't really respond in the most accurate manner or the best manner possible. So they all kind of went to the back and pretty much away from the exit points. And there was a lot of back and forth between police and an off-duty police officer who was actually on scene already. And then somewhere around 2 a.m., 2:30 a.m. is when they started getting phone calls from this guy. But by that time, about 3 a.m., the police arrive, more police arrive with SWAT and so forth, and they come in and they break back the back window, and that's when the police or not back window, sorry, back wall, and that's when the police and the gunman actually kind of exchange fire and so forth. Now, I showed this video. There's not a whole lot to this video, but I show it because I wanted to show you some things that were wrong in this situation. Most of the participants ended up fleeing and going back to the back of the club into the bathrooms, which isn't necessarily the best thing to do. So there was 3 entrance and exits, one of which was known for everybody. There's a side exit that wasn't exactly known, but there was also a balcony or patio exit in the front as well. And though he came in through the side and they might have had time to come through the front, they didn't. They went all to the back. And of course, instincts kick in. And when instincts kick in, well, whatever training or whatever you have in mind is what's actually going to kind of unfold, and how your body's going to respond to these situations and how your mind's going to respond to these situations. And that's kind of what we teach in our classes. We teach, what do you do? On top of what do you do, what are other things you can do? And so the problem itself, and the reason why we have to give active shooter training nowadays, is because, as you can see here, these events are occurring more and more and more. So between 2000 and 2013, there was 160 incidents. Okay. Now, there's a lot of different statistics between this, and I'm going to show you some of these, but a couple things to keep in mind. So most of the time for police to get there, it can take upwards of 15 minutes. And active shooter situations are over in, sometimes less than that. Most of them are over before police even get there. Now, there has been a couple times in history where, just like the Orlando shooting, where it was more after the police got there, they're either subdued or they are killed by the police because of a shootout or something of the sort. So casualties from this between 2000 and 2013, 1,043. That's a lot of casualties, okay? And so you have a mix between some of this stuff, like wounded and killed, and we like to show some of the stuff and the stats on that. So these are the events, and if you can look at the timeline, they're just getting worse and worse and worse. And beforehand, like before Columbine and stuff like that, people weren't really preparing for this. They thought things were like an isolated incident. And that's why we've started to teach this, is because they're not isolated incidents. They can occur anywhere. And I'll show you here in a little bit some breakdown of most common occurrences. But yeah, they are on the rise. The whole entire if you can look at the timeline, you can see this, we just get more and more and more each and every year. So here's some stats between shot and killed. So there is a lot of injuries. There's more injuries than deaths, but usually when we look at this stuff, we look at it and we think, okay, well, active shooters, what are they going to target? Well, most of the time what an active shooter really is anybody who really intends on bringing harm or death to a large group of people. And they target large groups of people. They'll scope it out, and they want places like businesses, concerts, anything that just has a large gathering, because they intend on doing damage. And so when we look at this, we can tell a few things here. We can tell, like, where they most frequently occur, okay? Obviously, schools, businesses, those have a lot of people, right? Those have a lot of patrons and so forth who are there, and schools. I mean, think about Virginia Tech. Columbine, all those had a large amount of students, right? So when you think about and you break this down, you got to remember they're going to go for large places. And unfortunately, most businesses are large. And that's why we think it's important that employees have this training. And something we've kind of thought about is here, we have been implementing this as well. We've been doing training with our employees. We have plans in place. We've actually implemented this into our, we've implemented this into our hiring process. So when people get brought on, we'll be teaching them active shooter, and we'll be teaching them this information. And why is that important? Because, well, we don't know when active shooter situations are going to happen. Okay. They could be from frustrated employees. It could be from people who just have a bad view of your company or your business or your school, or just people who were isolated, socially isolated, and they just want to bring harm upon people. So you never really know when this is going to happen. It's unpredictable. So it's best to train your colleagues and train your employees so that they actually know how to respond to these situations. And that's another thing we teach. We teach how to respond to these situations, how do they occur, what's the profile behind your active shooter. So, what signs should I look out for inside of my employees? And there's plenty of videos. You can go out there and you can YouTube some stuff, but there's really nothing that is going to prepare you like sitting in a class. And our classes are relatively short, and they show you all of this information, and you'll take this away and be able to maybe even put in plans to help your organization in the future. Now, 69% of these incidents, they end within 5 minutes or less. They come in, they shoot, and then sometimes they even take their own lives, or they try to flee before the police get there. In the case of Columbine, there was a shootout. Orlando, there was a shootout between them. And in some retrospect, looking back at like Orlando, I even think that after the gunman went in, he probably would have fled if he wouldn't have had that first initial contact with that off-duty police officer. So they go in and they're looking for mass injury. So 43% of these incidents cease before law enforcement arrival. Well, why do we put that out there, and why do we think about that? Well, if you know what to do and you are prepared for active shooter situations, this shouldn't scare you, because you're going to know what to do. One of the things we teach is run, hide, and fight. So at the last resort, fight. So we teach the whole breakdown and the theory behind where you should hide, where you should run to, and how you should fight. And when we do the whole fight thing, we tell you, and we show you improvised weapons and things to use. And when you're hiding, there's other little tools that you can use when you're hiding. And it's really a continual process. And the reason why some of these end before law enforcement arrive is because in some cases, the perpetrators are apprehended before law enforcement arrives. Okay, but in other cases, they can't find anybody, they flee, or they take their own life. And 13% of these ended with unarmed civilians disrupting the situation. So that's you, that's me, that's your colleagues, or anybody like that. So that's why we teach fighting, is because it's a huge part of this. And it minimizes the impact on your business as well, knowing what to do and how to do this. So yeah, that brings me into the impact. So why is this a big deal? Why is this important? Well, in a business or a company, we always look for the bottom line, right? We're always thinking about money, and we're always thinking about increase in revenue. Well, if you have active shooter situations, okay, these can impact your company's reputation. Why does it impact your company's reputation? Well, a lot of the times it's because, well, people will not want to go visit, or if there was something that happened major, people wouldn't want to go to your business because they would feel like it might be unsafe. Now, if there was a situation where you could handle it and you handled the situation fine, there was fewer fatalities or fewer injuries because your company was trained, your school was trained, you had the right resources in place, well, that's just going to have a lesser impact on your company reputation. But in the grand scheme of things, if you aren't trained, if you aren't prepared for this, it's going to have a huge impact on your reputation. Okay, think about it. If we have one of our centers up in San Bernardino, and it's just right around the corner from where the San Bernardino shooting was. And even being so close can have a damaging effect on your company's reputation. But when people drive by there and people see that, or they see that the inland center there, they're thinking, wow, I can't believe that took place there. I can't believe this happened. So think about that in retrospect when we talk about your company or your business or your school and how it's going to impact that. We have an impact to productivity. And the reason why you have an impact to productivity is because people, when they come back to work, they're just going to have a lower morale. They're going to be worried about the situation. They might be worried that it'll happen again. These are all things that actually can affect your business or your school or your organization. And so people will often back, they're going to be sad. If you don't have a plan in place, just something we talk about, having a plan in place after the fact. So you got through the active shooter situation, but after the fact, there's other things that you need to actually consider and think about. And that's like the well-being of your employees. Because if they don't feel like you took the time, or your company took the time, your organization took the time to set up an active shooter situation, they might not feel like you're doing everything to protect them. So the productivity is going to be lower. Their morale is going to be lower. Obviously, with an active shooter situation, if there is deaths or injuries, that's going to really, really affect the morale. Job satisfaction. They might not be satisfied with the job anymore. They might not want to come back. There could be litigation and property damage. Obviously, property damage would be huge, shooting windows. In the case of Columbine, they were using pipe bombs outside the school before they even went in. Inside the school, they brought these little propane bombs in, but they didn't really go off the way they had expected. But still, they had a lot of property damage and the cleanup from there. These are all things you have to think about in litigation. Were there things in place to protect people? If not, there could be litigation from that and injury costs. So if there is any injuries and the things that might have to go from there, and that might tie into litigation a little bit. So these are all things that really could impact the way your business operates and impact the bottom line. I mean, most of the time, it's unfortunate, but most of the time we think about bottom line as money. We think about, we want to be making money. We want to be, having students in our schools and in our organizations. We want to be in front of our clients. We want our clients coming in, and we want to make money from this, and we want to go, forward. But when you have an active shooter situation, it's going to diminish that bottom line. So some things we think about and some things we do. We obviously teach the run and escape if possible, hide if you can't escape, and then fight. And we break these down further and further and further, and we tell you exactly what's going on and where you should hide and where you should run to and the things you should do. And so some of the other things we kind of look at and consider is how to identify and proactively reduce the occurrence of workplace violence. This is huge, right? So knowing those key indicators, which is something we talk about in our psychology portion of the class, knowing those key indicators and why people might lash out, or why people might try and create active shooter situations. Knowing that will actually help keep you safe, and knowing those indicators, because there's psychological indicators, there's life indicators from their life, like how is this person typically how does this person typically work or live throughout the day. Those can indicate a lot of things with active shooter situations. We also go into how to respond when an active shooter situation is in your vicinity. So not only if it happens with you, like if it happens in your vicinity, what should you do? A lot of the times people end up on lockdown. They locked down schools, they locked down buildings. We were locked down. Our company was locked down during one of the active shooter situations in San Bernardino. So we were on lockdown then. So what did you do to your people? What do your employees do? What do your HR? What do they do? Do they reach out to people who are on their way to the centers? Do they, or the organization? Do they reach out and talk to people, tell them not to come into work? What's your plan? That's another thing. Kind of a little side note here is plans. Like, we have to have plans in place for this. You can't just take a video offline, a 2-minute video offline, and know exactly what you're going to do, and how to do it. You have to implement plans. You have to run these plans, and you have to, on top of that, continually, do drills, just like fire drills, right? We were all taught at a little age. Here in California, we have earthquakes, but even around the world, you have fire, tornadoes if you're from like the Midwest, and we're usually taught at a young age what to do in those situations. Well, we can't really ignore this anymore, and this needs to be one of those things that we're preparing for on a continual basis, just like fire, and we're drilling for on a continual basis, just like fire, earthquake, tornadoes, stuff like that. I know here in California we don't really have tornadoes, but I grew up in the Midwest. I'm from Oklahoma, so it's like the best thing I could think about is tornado drills. And so, like, what to do when law enforcement arrives? So, like, when law enforcement arrives, we talk about what their main priority is, their main objective is, and how they want to secure the situation and move forward. And that's important, because if your employees, or if you don't know how to respond to this, you could end up getting yourself injured. And for the most part, everybody's like, well, okay, law enforcement, I'm just going to comply and do what they say. But there's also more to that. So how do you get law enforcement there? And once they're there, what are you going to do? What's going to happen after that? Because you're not just going to get to leave after the situation. They're going to want to talk about things. They're going to want to debrief. And we go over all this stuff in our class. One of the things that's going to be huge is insurance and OSHA. So the Occupational Health or Safety and Health Administration. So these are some big guidelines that are going into place, and with insurance companies now, you got to think about the impact with your insurance and what your insurance companies want you to do. Will your rates go up if you don't take this training, or if you don't have some kind of plan in place? These are all things that you have to think about, and the reasons why we give classes. So for active shooter mitigation, the first thing you really need to do is employees and management really need to get the essentials. They really, really, really need to know how to respond to these situations and what's out there for them. And so, like we say in our classes, we teach a lot about mitigation for our employees and for management, or for your employees. And this is huge. This is just the first step in the thing. So like I said, we've started implementing it for our employees, or we've already done it for our employees, and we're implementing it into other areas of our business. But next after that is your building safety and security. One of the things that Al-Imam can do is we can come out and do site surveys with you, and we can look at your building and look at your parking structure and how your security operates and how your visitors are checked into the center, and we can help show you where your holes are and help you, we'll write a report up and help you, fix those problems. So there's also some specialty courses you can do. I want to kind of talk a little bit, and if you have any questions, feel free to put these in the chat box here about what we do in our classes. So we have different kinds of offerings and different kinds of classes that we teach. The first one is our open enrollment. Open enrollment is $150, but it could be with people from other companies, other schools. We have a minimum enrollment of 6, max of 20, but it's only 3.5 to 4 hours long. This gives us enough time to talk about it. We do scenarios. We do Yeah, Morgan, 1 second. I'm seeing what you put here. So we do like scenarios and we do walkthroughs. Yeah, so some of the things besides just the class and some of the things we go through is we talk about, let's just break down one of the things and so you can see kind of how our classes operate. Let's just talk about fighting. So we teach running, we teach hiding, and we teach to fight. But there's also some other things here in the background here, and other things we teach like psychology. But let's talk about fighting, for example. So it's a continual process, the whole run, hide, fight. It's a continual process. You run, you find your exit, you flee the situation. If you can't, you hide. If you can't, and, when you're hiding, one of the things you do is on top of hiding, you also want to kind of protect yourself. So scatter out in the room, don't group together in a big group. That's one of the bigger things you don't want to do is like group together. Well, why do we not want to group together? Well, because we become a bigger target, right? So if you're a bigger target, when the person comes through the door, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to open fire. So if you're all grouped together, well, that's a bad situation. So you spread out and then you fight. So if I was in an active shooter situation, and one of the things we teach is if you're in a classroom or you're in a room and you're hiding because there is no possible way to get out of the building, well, one of the things you're going to do is you're going to look for something to fight with. There's improvised weapons everywhere. Just looking around. Look around your room right now. Everybody look around where you're sitting. Do you see something that you could use? I would say 99.9% of the time you have something. If you're in an office right now, what do you have? Computers, CPUs, monitors, keyboards. In the hiding situation, you have a belt, right? Almost everybody, at least males, we wear a belt almost every single day to work. So you have that, and that'll help you out. That could be a fighting tool. You can use that to block the door. There's a bunch of different things you can do in that situation. So we're talking about fighting and things that you can actually use, right? Well, chairs, and what you might want to do is position yourself close to the door, talk to everybody, and we tell you and we teach you how to respond and how you should act when you get in the room. So kind of going from hiding and fighting at the same time. Well, when you get into the room and you're kind of hiding, well, one of the things you want to do is silence your cell phone, right? This is the biggest giveaway. Even if it's on vibrate, it could give you away. If the active shooter is walking down a hallway and you're hidden in one of the rooms or the copy room or something like that, and the active shooter hears bzz, 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 he's automatically going to know, or he or she is really going to know somebody's in there. Right? Same thing for screaming or crying. I know it's our nature. Human nature is fight or flight, right? Everybody has this instinct to either fight or run. And sometimes in the running situation and in the flight situation, we break down. Some people freeze, and you can almost say there's three. There's fight or flight, and then freeze. Some people freeze. They just don't know what to do. They just weren't prepared for the situation. They've never heard anything like that. And we can really help reduce that with the training, because once you're trained to fight or you're trained what to do in an active shooter situation, right, you'll know how to respond. So your likeliness of freezing up will be drastically reduced. Going back to the whole fighting situation, like me personally, I'm gonna grab a CPU. I'm a big computer nerd. I'm gonna grab a CPU from the room if I'm in there. I'm gonna go stand by the door and wait for the person, right? I'm gonna lock the door. I'm gonna try to turn out some lights and try to keep myself from becoming a target. But if he does come in, I'm gonna be ready to fight and take that person down. And kind of backing up here, when we look at this, we look at the PowerPoint. What did we say before? We said 13% of incidents ended with unarmed civilians or citizens disrupting the shooting. Why? because they had a plan in place. They didn't just hide. They didn't just lay down in the bathroom. And if you look back at Orlando, that's one of the biggest things. Look at how many people in the video, look at how many people were around the Orlando shooter. It's amazing to think, did nobody want to try to take this person down to stop this from happening? So getting into the subject and getting into active shooter and knowing and having a plan is huge. And that's one of the things that Alamom can do. We can help you with that. Our open enrollment classes, just talking about open enrollment really quickly. And if you guys have questions, feel free to ask. I mean, Morgan, I can't see some of the chat, so Morgan can relay some of the stuff back to me. But our classes are designed to be scenario-based, to have different activities to help you retain the information, little pop quizzes here and there, nothing that we don't really grade, but, you know, to get your mind moving in the right direction of things you can do to reduce the likeliness or impact of an active shooter situation to your business. So the open enrollment is an ILT-OLL. Well, what does that mean? It means that it's instructor-led. We have an instructor in the classroom with you, but there's also students online. So that's online live. And the instructor-led training it's really nice. We have enough seats in the classroom. We talk about it. We break into groups. We even break our students online into groups, and we talk about certain situations. So if this was to happen in your business right now, what would you do? And then we kind of talk about each one of the responses and so forth. And there's a bunch of different other things we go over in the classes. On top of that, we can do company-wide webinars, private events at your company. And then we have some other things we can do on site for your company, like helping you build a plan, your risk assessments, and so forth. And questions towards those, you know, feel free to put those in there. The training hours for the class, it is 4 hours long. We do take breaks in between. That's huge, right? But the classes are really, really fun. They're really, really engaging, and the last thing our instructors want to do is put you to sleep. We just want to show you the material, show you how you can protect yourself, your employees, your family, your loved ones during a situation like that. So were there any other questions or any other comments, things you guys want to talk about, maybe some other things about the whole run hide or the active state of the world? I'm here for questions. I'm here to, you know, help you out.
Jonathan, we have some questions in the chat box,
Okay.
but I have some people that are asking for a little bit of logistics questions that we'll get into, but Billy has a question about more of the teaching material. So is there a discussion that you can go through with us, take us through? You mentioned a little bit what is around our desk, what can we use? Can you walk us through a scenario from start to finish as how we should react?
Yeah, sure, for sure. So most of the time, in most situations, let's break it down. Let's just think about what happens and how the shooter's going to come in. So the shooters on the outside, they kind of pre-prep this, they kind of plan, and they look at the building logistics, and like I said before, they look for larger places, larger businesses, larger organizations, concerts, that kind of stuff. And what they're going to do is they're going to come in. Sometimes they'll come in from the front door. In the Columbine situation, they were outside throwing pipe bombs, and nobody knew what was going on until they started coming in their class and they started like hearing stuff. They might have thought it was like a training exercise or something like that. But on top of this, so once they come in, their intent right at that point is going to be, their intent at that point is really going to be to do damage. So they're going to come in the front door. And let's think about this real quick. What are most businesses doing right now? What are most security guards at businesses, what are they right now? And we talk about that in our course too. Well, they're usually ambassadors, right? They just sit there, they talk to people, maybe show them where to go. So they're going to come in the door and they're going to actually go for something like that, the security guard, whoever's around. And so a lot of people at that point, when the active shooter comes in, they might not know what to do. And so then it's like a panic. It becomes a huge panic. Well, what you should do As soon as you hear any gunfire, which is kind of, it's an odd thing if you really haven't ever heard gunfire. It's a really odd thing the first time you hear it, but it's loud. You can definitely tell through doors, through windows and stuff like that. It can be muffled. Um, anyways, when you hear it, you need to be on alert. You need to run. It's the first thing. Run towards an exit point. Um, if they're coming in through a front door of a big building, 6 stories, you might have to do something like, you know, notify other people. So when I'm running down the hallway, I'm pulling fire alarms, and I'm probably going to have my phone in my hand calling the cops, calling the police, 911, to try to get something going. Once you get to the running point, it's a continual process. So if you come down the hallway, you come streaking down the hallway, and next thing you know, you round the corner, and there he or she is. Well, you might want to run back, find somewhere to hide. And at that point, when you're hiding, you're going to barricade yourself in the room, do other things. And then when you barricade yourself in the room, I'm looking for a weapon at that point. And so after the situation, you do a good job, you hide, no fighting was necessary. Maybe the police show up, they apprehend the suspect, or, depending on every situation kind of ends differently. But once the situation is over, that's when you're going to go into this little post phase and this recovery phase. Well, the first thing that's going to happen is the police are going to sit there and they're going to be like, hey, I need to see your hands. Their job really when they first get on scene isn't to worry about any survivors or anything going on. Their job is to clear the scene first. And so once they do that, they'll let rescue personnel in, and they'll kind of talk and they'll kind of figure out and clear the scene. Well, they're going to take everyone else and they're going to probably put you in a certain place. Like if you're in the building, they're going to bring you over. Everybody who's outside of the building who has already escaped, they're already going to be talking with them, trying to get ongoing information to figure out and piece together what happened. And then after the fact, and they're going to probably put you in a room and they're going to talk and figure out what happened and just clear everybody one by one. And then after that, we start the recovery process. So coping, active coping, helping your employees, your students know what to do and know how to recover from this process. So hopefully that kind of gives you a scenario of what happens. And then afterwards, like I said, it's going to be a post-recovery phase. It's going to be going on for a while. You got to clean up. You have a psychological impact to your employees, your students. There should be a plan in place for this. And basically after the fact, you're going to want to recover, and you want to recover as fast as possible. And like I said, having a plan is really going to help you recover as soon as possible. A couple questions that I see that are up that I can see are your course posts or DPSST or LE state certification. We are in the process right now of getting our DHS approved, our course DHS approved. People are working actively on getting this stuff set up and getting it approved and so forth. The open enrollment fee $150. They're asking, is it attendee or group? It is attendee. There's some other pricing stuff. Connect with Morgan, connect with our reps and talk about prices and stuff like that. But yeah, it is $150 per person. We do a maximum enrollment of 20 people, and the reason why we do a maximum enrollment in a class of 20 when we're doing the open enrollment is really because we want to have smaller classes where we can break out and talk about things and really discuss the situation and discuss your response or what your thoughts on responses will be and go from there. So we really like that warm, intimate, like cozy feeling of small classrooms. We can do it in other ways. We can do webinars to your company on-site. We can come to your company and do a private event where you'll talk with our reps and we'll figure out the maximum amount of people will sit in the class. But we can do this in a different situation where we come to your business and give the training and maybe even tailor some of that stuff towards your business, like your escape routes and so forth, your stuff. Most of the locations are the actual courses ran out of San Diego right now, off of Miramar Road. But we do rotate right now the location where we're going to be teaching it every week and month. It just really depends. Any other questions? Any other comments, concerns? Anything you guys want to talk about with active shooters and kind of the state of the world and what happened? And active shooters can really be anything, whether there was one injury, no injuries. You know, and they're motivated by different things. Think about the train situation. There was a train situation, what was it, 4 months ago? No, more than that, actually. About a year ago, I think. There's a train situation where it was really all brought upon by self-motivation of that one guy. He was actually just hungry looking for food. And that was one of the situations that ended up in a pretty good place. Not a lot happened. The guy was apprehended. Active shooters really can happen anywhere. Like one of the things I think about anywhere I go to the movie theater. I think about Aurora, and I position myself in the theater and how I want to kind of escape if I have to escape and so forth. So here's a quick question. Let's kind of like do this little call to action. Do you know where your emergency exits are right now? Have you thought about it? If this went down right now, where are you going to go? How are you going to run out? Most people might think, like for me, for example, I'm out, you know, I got to go out one door and I'm out the front door. I'm out a little side door. Okay. So one of the other things is like when I go into a room, I look at the emergency exit sign. There's this little emergency exit sign almost in every single room. It has to be there because of fire code, right? So you know where your exits are and what to do. So let's talk about some defense items in your area. So you couldn't run out, you couldn't get out that emergency exit. You know where it is. What other defense items do you have in your office? Anybody have any good defense items in their office? What would you use? I mean, I'm using CPUs because I'm a big computer nerd, but there's also things like what do you have? Baseball bats, tables, scissors. Yeah, that's a good one. Scissors. Some people have staplers. I mean, staplers can be a pretty damaging thing. Letter opener. Yeah, that's a really good one. A little sharp letter opener. Sit right by the door and kind of position yourself and just jab as soon as they come in. I don't know why, but around here and around our organization, steel-toe boots are good. Yeah, swift kick to the side. Fire extinguishers have become this big hot topic lately. Because what do? They have, most of them are made out of CO2, and it's a compressed gas and everything like that, and they have the fire retardant in there. And if you sprayed that in somebody's face, that would disrupt them. What about like some females we carry, some females, sorry, they carry pepper spray, right? That could work if you have it in your purse. What about chemicals? Does anybody have any chemicals in their office? If you have chemicals in your office, you can spray that in their face. What else is there? You have steel-toe boots, letter openers, scissors, hairspray. Yeah. Okay, so there's a question. So what if there's more than one shooter? Well, it depends. And this, you're still going to react the same exact way, no matter what. You're going to run, hide, fight. And hopefully, when you're fighting, you're not fighting two people. And hopefully, you have more than two people in your room. Because if you disrupt the situation, let's just say they're going down, they're doing everything one by one. One tries to come in the room, he breaks through the door. You start throwing things at them, and you commit to the situation. You don't just kind of like be timid about it. If you're going to throw the CPU or you're going to throw that computer, you throw it. But on top of that, you're going to do everything you can to bring down that shooter as he comes to the door. And if there's another one after that, same thing, disarm them. There's a question out there. Most plans involve addressing active shooter response inside a building. Is there anything you can do to we can apply to the open areas, like sporting events, people gathering for marathons, open shopping centers? Yeah, and most of the time, when it comes to open areas, it really, and sometimes this is out of your control, but it really comes down to security, right? We think about security getting into concerts. Now it's getting huge where you can go through metal detectors. They look inside your purses. The biggest thing with preventing these is really how you set your response and how you set the situation, or how you set up your security. And let's just think on top of that, like, we do this risk assessment. We walk through, we look at things. Well, one of the things we look at is, what is the access to the building? Is there gates? Is there some check-in process? Is your building just open and can everybody get to that location? Well, the same thing for sporting events. You're still going to go through the same thing: run, hide, fight, right? That's the same thing in every single situation. Even if it's in a large open sporting center, there's still places you can run to, and in some certain situations, if you're in an open sporting situation and you're right near where it starts, think about it, you can't run, you can't hide, your only option is to fight back, right? And that's when it comes down to what your instincts are and what your training is. And can you fight back? Can you, disarm the person and subdue the person? And with help, you might think right now, well, I can't. You might think that, but with help, you can. If you're, some people, some guys big, like I'm 6'6", nearly 300 pounds. I'm gonna do, everything I can to stop the situation, regardless of what happens and the outcome of the situation. I'm gonna do everything I can. I'm gonna give it full force. Why? Because I value these here. I value my friends and my coworkers, and I would easily put myself in that situation. And everybody's different. We all have different mentalities and different perspectives, and we all grew up different. But knowing that you have the training and knowing what to do when they come through the door, or when you have to hide, or you have to fight, that's what's going to be huge.
John, there's a couple other questions. I'm not sure if you got a chance to see or not. One of them was, what about a natural instinct to protect loved ones or coworkers? And I think you had just started touching on this when Russell asked the question. Do you want to expand on that a little bit more? What's the happy medium for us? How do we protect ourselves and protect others?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great thing. Is like, we all have a human instinct to help other people and to protect our loved ones. Well, having a plan, and like let's just say, I was talking about this before a little bit. When I go to a theater, I automatically want to protect, my girlfriend and my daughter if they're with me. So I'll set up the situation where if somebody came in, I would be the first. I would be in an open area where I could respond. And it's human nature to want to help. We love helping. Most people love helping and love protecting our loved ones and our coworkers. Well, this is something you're going to want to do. So if it's a situation like that, a lot of people, you might have some coworkers who are scared, and you're going to have to reassure them and let them know that you're going to help them out. And then also, while you're reassuring them, show them that you're going to help out. Get a weapon if you're hiding. Get yourself in a good place to actually fight back. And then think about recovery. So we go through the situation. It's terrifying. It is absolutely terrifying. And people are going to want to talk. Your loved ones are going to want to talk, and they're going to want to start the coping process, and you're going to have to help them out with that. There's another question in here about pepper spray. Yeah, so pepper spray, it's not so great in an enclosed area, but I'll tell you what, it'll work. And let me see if I can do this real quick. I actually have this really cool thing I can show you. me bring up this video for you. Let me pause my little thing here. So there was a situation where RA did use a resident advisor at Seattle Pacific University. He used pepper spray. So this is a man coming in. He first pepper sprays him. And yeah, it'll suck. I'll be honest with you. If you've ever been pepper sprayed, it hurts. But the main thing is disorienting the person and making sure that they cannot do any other harm. So in this case, what this guy did was first thing he did, he saw him come through the door, he had pepper spray. He sprayed the assailant who had a shotgun and was intending on killing people. He sprayed him and then sat there. And yeah, there's some things that we can talk about in this video, what you should have done and what you shouldn't have done. But the grand scheme of things is, yeah, he used pepper spray inside of that building, and he was fine. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's going to sting your eyes a little bit. I've had it inside a building, the contact where they throw it behind a fan, and it's not the greatest thing, and it does burn your eyes a little bit, but it's still better than being directly sprayed with it. Directly sprayed with it is going to hurt. And a lot of times, pepper spray is one of those weird things because you have to have a certain ratio to legally carry it, and it depends on where you are and what state you're at or in. Because certain states, you can't carry it unless the pepper spray has a certain ratio, and otherwise you have to have actually a permit to carry it. But it's a pretty amazing thing. But if you don't have pepper spray, you have chemicals, Windex. Some people, if you teach in a classroom, we have whiteboard spray. That stuff works as long as you haven't replaced it with water. Even water would work because you'd still be able to orient the person. Maybe coffee, maybe cold water. You can at least throw the cold water at them to disorient them, and that way you can disarm them. Any other good questions like that? That's a really good question, actually. Good, okay. More questions? All right, so thank you so much for taking the class. This is a little picture of me. I'm right there in the middle, like kind of looking like I'm yelling, but this is some training exercises we were doing. But yeah, thanks for taking the class and watching the webinar. I hope you got some really valuable insight and you can kind of apply this to your business. And I really hope to see you in the classes in the future. Like I said, I'm one of the primary instructors, so I would love to see you in the classes and learn more about active shooting. Thanks for your time today. Let us know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns.